I'm Mandy Yarkich from Creative Matters, and you're listening to Creative Matters on Air, where I have conversations with new and established artists from around New Zealand. I love to listen to artists' stories and learn about their creative process, and maybe you do too, which is why I've made this podcast, to inspire, inform and educate. I hope you can take away something positive and encouraging from each of these amazing stories to help you on your own creative journey. Welcome to Creative Matters episode 33. It is so good to be back, and thank you very much for joining me. Today I'm talking to photographer and fine arts printer John Botton. John is a South African-born fine art photographer. He's also an entrepreneur and self-confessed technical geek, and is the founder and CEO of Print Art Fine Art Imaging, a company well known and loved by many New Zealand artists. In John's words, the creative process has always been a weird and wonderful thing to experience, but it is always underpinned by a feeling. John is a true supporter of artists and their process. He sees his fine art printing business as much as a printing business as an enabling business for artists and photographers. He's a people person, and he has created a community amongst New Zealand artists. John shares his passion for Namibia, the dichotomy of desert environments, his small business learning curves, his perception of failure, the importance of having a mentor, and how the artists he works with inspire him so much. You can see his beautiful photographic images on our blog, which is on our website, creativematters.co.nz, and also on John's website, johnbotton.com.
Right.
Hello, John. Hi.
Hello, Mandy.
Great to see you.
Thank you. And thank you for inviting me to be part of your amazing journey.
Oh, look, you're very welcome, and you're very much part of my journey, I would say. So it's lovely to have you here and be talking to you. Welcome to Creative Matters.
Thank you.
Okay, so John and I, we kind of do know each other I think we met maybe 3 years ago, and we just met sort of through artists that I knew who knew you.
Oh, Tanya, I think. Tanya was one of them.
Yeah, that's right. So, yeah, over the years since then, we've just kind of bumped into each other a lot. And then I ended up bringing you my artwork to print art as well. And yeah, we've become friends. And so it's really nice to have you here.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so let's get started. I know that you were born in South Africa, John. So can you tell us about your childhood and your journey to New Zealand?
Well, yes, I was born in Pretoria and in South Africa in 1960, in fact. So that gives my age away. Very undramatic childhood growing up. And in terms of art, very little art in the family, except my grandfather was the curator of the Pretoria Art Gallery. My great-grandfather. And my grandfather's house was always full of paintings that he had inherited from his father, various artists. And so there was always art around, but the practice of art wasn't really part of growing up. So it was around me, but there was no direct active influence in what I was doing.
Yeah. What sort of child were you?
I think growing up until I was into my formative years, or my teens, I was probably very average, compliant and average, and a little sporty, not very musical, although I always had aspirations of being a musician. And then I was a little terrorist when I was a teenager, so I was always in trouble. I had two older siblings, sisters, and one younger sibling, a brother. And so I had that sort of middle child syndrome, always battling for attention. It was, I think my brother came along when I was 5. So I had 5 good years of being the baby. And then after that, it was a battle, so it was.
Yeah, I'm a middle child as well, so I feel your pain. And at high school, were you actually taking creative subjects at that time, or had you not kind of discovered it?
I remember growing up, I was always drawn to more graphic art than um, I suppose, creative art. And I remember decorating my cupboard doors with a reproduction of the Who logo. So I spent hours, penciling out and the lines and painting it, and had lots of fun. I mean, I got into a bit of trouble painting onto our cupboard doors, but so that was my earliest memory of just spontaneous creativity. And then I think around early 70s, the Rocky Horror Picture Show arrived, and I did a big poster of the Lips, which somebody pinched, I think. One of my sister's boyfriends took a fancy to it and bullied it out of me. So off that went. And then there was a long hiatus in creativity. I dabbled a bit in painting. I always had aspirations of being an artist, and I always, after the first few attempts, gave up because it was too hard, or I just didn't get the results I wanted immediately. So it was a difficult birth, my creative process.
That's interesting, isn't it?
I was probably in my late teens, early 20s when I discovered photography in a serious way. Before that, I'd seen cameras around the house, but they were just for recording family snaps. They weren't a creative process or tool. And it was only in my early 20s that I picked up a camera and started seeing the world through a lens, or through different eyes, and began to realize that I was quite good at composing or understanding composition and lighting. So that was the beginning of it.
And what were you actually doing at that time? What was your job?
Well, I trained. I was a school dropout. I left school after, I think it was year 10 in South Africa. It was standard 8. I was a very difficult academic student, and I didn't enjoy the discipline of school. And I became an apprentice, fitter and turner, which I finished. But while I was while I was doing my apprenticeship, I was going to college, and I loved that. The academic side of what I was doing was very stimulating, and I thrived on that. So I finished my senior diploma in engineering and qualified as a fitter and turner.
Oh, wow. That's interesting.
So sort of creativity with metal, I suppose.
Yeah, exactly.
And machinery. So the mechanical brain has always been there, and it's still,
but it's still a very creative job, isn't it?
It kind of, I think it brings out my geekiness, So there's a creative side, but there's also a very strict discipline in engineering. Everything is quite precise. But at the same time, the problem solving is a creative process. So it marries quite nicely my geekiness and my creativity.
Yeah, absolutely. And so how long were you doing that kind of work for?
So I lasted as a fitter and turner for about 2 years, and eventually got tired of workshop life, early hours. We started work at 7 in the morning, finished at 5 in the afternoon, and it was quite grueling. And I yearned for a more sophisticated life, in an office environment. So I became a draftsman for a while, or a learner draftsman.
Wow.
And eventually that didn't quite work the way I thought it would be. It's not creative. It's really quite tedious. And back then it was all hand drawn on drawing boards. So it was, it's a tedious process of redrawing the same thing over and over if it was incorrect. And then eventually I left there, did a bit of sales, and in between that, I picked up a video camera. In fact, a friend of my wife Tina's, he had a camera and showed me how video cameras worked, and I got quite interested in that. And so started a small business called Canon Productions, just one day,
Really? Oh my
and
goodness.
bought a video camera and a recorder, and started hawking myself as a videographer.
Wow.
And so that was my first little business, and it wasn't commercially massive success, but it was a great learning process. And it sort of married my geekiness, in technology with the creative process.
Yeah, and you can see how that's kind of carried on through your life, hasn't it? I mean, all the other businesses that you've had are very much, connected to that kind of early experience.
Exactly the same.
Yeah.
So that's a common thread. In fact, even now, it's a common thread through what I do, the things that I like doing.
Yeah, and you're very entrepreneurial, obviously. So you've got that business side, the creative side, but also the geeky side.
Yeah, it's a good fit.
Yeah,
because you've got to have
combo.
one. Yeah, you've got to have one and the other. I think it's a sort of yin and yang fit for me in that balance.
And so what was happening with your photography at that time? Were you, from the beginning when you first picked up that camera, did it kind of continue over time and develop, or how did that play out?
So my first, I remember going off to the local racetrack and photographing motorcycles going around. And I mean, I had a terrible little hand, I think it was like a happy snappy camera. And that obviously didn't have the right lens, and it didn't have the right controls to do what I was doing. But I was quite interested in exploring different aspects of it. And it wasn't until I went on a trip to Mauritius, working trip. I was actually commissioned to do a promotion for a hotel. And I went walkabout in Port Louis, the main little town, with my camera. In fact, I borrowed my mother's camera. She had a very nice Minolta, and I borrowed her camera for the trip. And I grabbed some black and white film, and I walked around the streets, and I became a street photographer. So that sort of really piqued my interest in exploring the visual aspect of our everyday life, capturing it. And in fact, I still look back at those photographs and kind of realize that was almost like a genesis. It was like the beginning of the journey. Up until then, it was just messing around. But that was the first serious shutter release.
Amazing. And what was it, do you think, that sort of got you in that different sort of frame of mind or a different mindset with your photography from, someone who just liked to take some photos to suddenly thinking, actually, I mean, did you actually think that you could do something with this talent?
I never had aspirations to be a photographer, a serious commercial photographer. In other words, someone being paid for taking pictures. For me, it was a creative outlet. And I think having a camera that gave me control over what I was doing, or some control. In other words, a lens that I could isolate a small aspect of the street scene and photograph, and the controls of the camera to get the right shutter speed and the right depth of field, etc. So I think that was what really sparked it, was just having the right tools to explore what I was seeing.
Yeah. And I mean, were you always kind of initially responding to a place? Is that what you were doing to start with your photography?
Being in a foreign place was definitely a catalyst, and I think when you travel, you see things with fresh eyes as opposed to when you around your everyday environment. So traveling was one aspect of photography that it was probably the catalyst, the traveling and having the right equipment. I think that was where the spark, or the spark ignited a small flame.
Yeah. And then from there, I mean, obviously your business side sort of was developing, and we'll talk about that later. But how did the photography continue to develop over the years?
Yeah, I continued as a video producer for a number of years. I actually, my little business was struggling along. I didn't really have the business acumen to drive it. And again, Tina came in one day and said, "Oh, there's a position available at the local university looking for a producer." And I applied and got the job. So obviously, someone recognized my potential and gave me an opportunity. And I was with Fitz for 5 years. So that was, from a creative point of view, that was a big release because the academic environment was much more open to creative suggestion or to interpretation. Although working with the sciences was very disciplined, but working with a wide variety of people, really, I think there was quite a maturing experience for me. In that environment. So it was always creative. There were a lot of creative people around me, the other producers, and we worked a lot with the drama department on campus, did a lot of co-productions with them. And while I was there, I met or made friends with Jo, who was the local, the university photographer. So she was responsible for photographing events on campus, various, be they academic or be they ceremonial. And she invited me into the darkroom. So she gave me full access to the university darkroom, which was so beautifully equipped. Up until then, I had worked in my makeshift darkroom at home, turning the bathroom into a darkroom.
And then that's amazing. So you were doing your own development from early on.
Yes, I was. So I was developing and printing film from quite early on. But having access to the darkroom on campus was it was incredible. So I would go up there at lunchtime and spend an hour, just immersed in that whole, again, the geeky side of photography, getting the printing, understanding the printing and the different chemicals and different papers. And Jo was incredibly supportive. She would give me lots of encouragement and made equipment available that normally I wouldn't have access to. So it was great.
Oh, that's so good. Isn't it interesting how, the planets align and it just, all these things these opportunities came up and kind of guided you through into your practice and your future career too, I guess.
I think it was definitely a springboard. It was definitely a solid foundation. I mean, while I was there, I also had access to the library on campus, and I'm embarrassed to say I still have a couple of books from the library.
Don't we all?
but I discovered 2 books there that I really struggled to return, and the one was Ansel Adams. Just a journey through some of his photographic experiences and talking about some of his images, which, I mean, he's still one of my heroes and a great pioneer in photography, especially landscape photography. And another was a book on alternative photography, and that took me into a new realm of doing things like cyanotypes. So it's basically using not household chemicals, but alternative chemical, in fact, very old chemical recipes for creating images. So things like gum dichromate.
Wow.
So I dabbled in that for quite a while. Again, very geeky and technical, but very frustrating.
Yeah, I don't know very much about that kind of thing. So did you do lots of different sorts of processes with your photographs? Were you quite sort of experimental with using different sorts of chemicals over time?
Yeah, so that was, I was always looking for a different look, a different outcome, a different happy accident in the darkroom or wherever I was producing images. Like cyanotypes, you expose the negative in sunlight. So, it relies on, it's not exactly a precise process. It's very much a spontaneous, when you think it's had enough, you take it out of the sun. And sometimes it's worked and sometimes it hasn't. And but yeah, so, and then in the darkroom, doing multiple exposures with different negatives and getting different effects like solarization. So that was always a fun journey for me.
Yeah, I love the sound of that. I mean, it feels like it's almost like the same kind of processes an abstract painter might go through.
And it was driven by just looking for something different, not being happy with the conventional, everyday outcome.
Yeah, and I like the idea of not being sure what the outcome is going to be, sort of working through and different things happen sort of slightly out of your control at times. And yeah.
That's what I loved about the chemical side of photography. When you, in the darkroom, to correct an exposure, sometimes you do lots of dodging and burning. So you have all sorts of methods of overexposing one area and underexposing another. And it was lots of fun. So it was almost like a production or an orchestration when you're in the darkroom.
Yeah, sounds amazing. So just going back, I mean, how did you actually end up in New Zealand and when did you come out here from South Africa?
Okay, so we'll have to leapfrog a little. So, I mean, the photographic journey really, I think up until the 80s, I went on a long sabbatical through mostly work. I got quite sidetracked into the online business, so the internet world, and still creative and geeky and technical, but the creative process of photography was just put on the sideline for quite a while. And then I met, and so in fact, in 94, we migrated from Johannesburg to Cape Town, where I started Printworks. But on that journey, I took a little detour via Namibia, which is a neighboring country, and discovered the desert. And that's probably been my happy place since then. It's that arid, stark landscape. It really speaks to me. So it was a happy discovery, and it remains so. So it's always been a place where I can find peace, but yet massive creativity. It's very challenging and inspiring.
And your desert photos, we've got some on your blog, which is on our website. But your desert photographs are incredible. And is it just Namibia in particular, or desert in general that you're interested in?
Desert in general. So I did a trip to Israel a couple of years ago, and we went into the Negev, and again, just that arid landscape really appeals to me. In fact, even in New Zealand, there's some landscapes that you drive through that aren't the lush, typical New Zealand, forested areas. They also quite appeal in a different way.
What is it, do you think, that appeals so much?
I don't know. I think it's the simplicity of it. It's simple and yet complex. It's this dichotomy of perception. So when you look at it, you just see sand dunes, for example, but when you study them, you discover nuances and subtleties and detail that at first glance you miss. So it sort of invites a second and third investigation. And wherever you appear to find a barren landscape with no plants, when you look carefully, you'll actually find a lot of life, a lot of survivors that eke a living out of what looks like a barren place. So that it really appeals to me.
And there's so much sort of beautiful form and shape, isn't there, in the desert?
Yeah, it's the way the light describes the landscape, I think, for me, that appeals.
Yeah. So we're hopping around a little bit, but after the Namibia experience, and you obviously started a printing business, Printworks, in South Africa. So were you there for a little while with that business, and then you came to New Zealand, or how did that work?
So Printworks was back in the early 90s. That was my first business, serious business, I think, that I embarked on. And it would have been probably quite a successful business, but I had no clue on running a business. So we overstaffed, we overcapitalized, we didn't manage our cash flow, and I was involved in a partnership, and the partnership didn't go very well. So it was a big learning curve. It was probably my best business lesson ever. Is how to do it, but how not to do it.
Yeah.
And then I went on as I said, from there, the internet started happening, and I got sucked into a long, or sidetracked, I suppose, into not really, I don't think it was sidetracked. It was more like a new adventure, discovering, coding and bringing graphic and code together.
Oh.
So again, marrying the geeky with the creative,
yeah.
And that was a lot of fun. So it was a great journey. I enjoyed that.
And the business journey, I mean, I think, from a small business owner myself, I understand, the learning that's required. And often that first business is the kind of part of the journey, an important part of the journey, the learning journey. And you do often make mistakes that first time, which, happened to me as well. And then once you sort of figure out what you actually need to do and start again with a new business, I think that's quite a rich way to work in a way, even though it can be depressing when you're actually not, the first business isn't going so well. But yeah.
Look, it's for me, it's at the time, yes, it was very frustrating and it was depressing. But looking back, it was a massive lesson. It was an important part of the journey for me, is understanding the failure and what failed and how it failed and learning from it. So I suppose, like any process, failure is a key to success. It's a key to change something and improve it.
Yeah.
So if you look at all outcomes, if they're not littered with failure along the way, I don't think they're very robust. I think they're fragile. So failure, I think, produces a really strong outcome.
And it's what you do with the failure, or with the experiences.
Yeah.
That counts, and how you get your head around, maybe a more negative experience, and then how you turn it around to becoming a positive part of your journey.
And I see that every day, artists working with a concept and struggling with it and producing what they see as failures, but learning from them, and when they eventually, discover that eureka moment, or that something that really works, it's from the failures. It's from understanding the failures and
and it's about embracing that whole journey, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I want to just jump back quickly. So I've got photographically, we just go back to the photography. Up until a certain point, I was really self-taught and discovering. Photography is a very technical process, but also a very creative process. Again, back to that dichotomy of the technical and the creative. And I met a photographer in the village where we lived in Hart Bay called Peter Corbett, and someone said, "Oh, he's a photographer. You should chat to him." And I went and had a coffee with him once one morning, and we chatted photography, and I said to him, "Well, have you been to Namibia?" And he said, "No, what's that?" He was an Englishman, so he spent a lot of time around the Cape, where we lived, the Cape area. So I arranged a trip to go back to Namibia, to the same place I had previously been. And that was probably a masterclass in photography for me, was working with Peter. Peter was a very accomplished photographer, landscape photographer. And he taught me more than anybody else. So it was like going from apprenticeship to masterclass, or from first year varsity to PhD in a very short space of time. And we used to stand on the side of a mountain or wherever we were taking photographs, and I would get so frustrated because I couldn't understand the different settings, and I wasn't getting the results that I wanted. And he would just stand next to me, very casually, and he would just chuckle, just laugh at me, and eventually I would ask him, and he would give me some pointers, and I'd put those into practice, and that continued for years. We worked together on various road trips, and I think that just propelled my technical understanding of photography to a point where I was able to express what I was feeling or capture what I was seeing in a way that satisfied me. So having a mentor, I think, is such an important part of the creative process, because it's not just the creativity. I think it's the technical understanding of your tools and what you're doing, the medium that you're working in. It doesn't matter what medium it is. Having a mentor or having someone to guide you to your own style and expression is quite important.
Yeah, I agree. And so what was it for you that photography was doing? I mean, obviously you enjoyed the process and you enjoyed certain places, but what did it bring to you as a person?
It was always a creative outlet. I worked in various fields where there was a lot of pressure, a lot of frustration. And for me, just grabbing a camera and walking outside was a way to just release the stress. It was a de-stressor. Even now, if I pick up my phone and look through the lens and take a picture, it immediately relaxes me and focuses me on, excuse the terrible pun, but focuses me on, my what I'm looking at, or my surroundings, and I can actually, let go of the stress that I'm dealing with. So it's always been that creative outlet.
Yeah.
So just jumping back quickly to Peter Corbett. So he was also my mentor in learning to print. So around the time that I was taking photography more seriously and going on much more adventurous road trips, I wanted to start printing. And so I bought my first giclée printer. Giclée meaning it's a wide gamut, multicolor. It's got 12 different ink colors, so it has quite a lot of coverage of the color spectrum. And again, frustration at learning how to print and interpreting what you see on the screen and getting it onto paper was a bit frustrating. And choosing the right paper, choosing the right technical process to actually print the image. And Peter guided me through that. So we ended up working together in Cape Town. He had started a fine art gallery, photographic gallery. I was still working in my business in Cape Town, which is a real estate online vertical portal. And that was very consuming in terms of time. I didn't have much free time around that. But Peter, he was retired and looking for a way to advance his own photographic career, and decided that gallery was a good way to go. So he started his own gallery, and the two of us would print and images and curate them for his gallery. So that was the beginning into the fine art printing. And again, a masterclass in learning how to print. Peter was also a very experienced printer. He'd been printing for many years. So it was wonderful to sit at his side and learn the nuances of printing and how to extract the best possible result from a digital image.
How amazing.
Yeah. And then, just after that, I sold my business in Cape Town, and Tina and I went camper vanning for 2 years around South Africa. So we packed our bull mastiffs into a camper van. We had two dogs and the camera.
Oh my goodness.
And we spent 2 years just wandering around South Africa, going from, we just traveled spontaneously. We never had a real plan of where we were going. And most of our destinations were from chatting to locals or from other people. And they'd mention a place that was interesting, and we'd go off there and spend a month.
Oh, that's my dream holiday. How incredible.
And it gave me time to spend with my camera, every day, just about I was outside in a different location, new place, street photography, landscape photography, whatever took my fancy, So animals, we did quite a lot of traveling around the national parks, so a lot of animal photography. And
do you ever actually photograph people, John?
I do, yeah, I do.
You like that too?
I actually enjoy photographing people, but I find it very confrontational, and it takes a lot of, I think, courage to confront someone and extract something from them that they don't even know they have, or a side of them or a look from them that they often keep private, and that for me is a great challenge, and I would love to do more of that. But it's confronting myself.
Yeah, and I guess there's more interaction with people than with landscapes and animals.
Well, look, landscapes don't move, so they're wonderful subjects. They don't answer back, and
they don't argue.
They don't give you attitude, but they're certainly challenging. As the light changes, the landscape changes. One thing I learned from Peter was don't stand in the same place for too long, because every time you move, you see something different. You see the world from a different perspective. So, if you're a landscaper and you're just standing in one place and you see one view, you're missing so much. I always say, look behind you, look up and look down, and take 10 steps to the left or right, or, pick a spot somewhere and just head for it, and then look around, and when the light's changing very quickly, it's hard work when you're carrying around all your equipment, and you're continuously moving to find a different vantage point or different point of view. So that just popped into my mind.
No, that's so true. And what is it about your, what do you particularly like to capture? I mean, you've talked about light, but is there one thing or a couple of things that really drives you to capture or to kind of attain from what you're looking at through your photography?
I think it's a way to express myself, what I'm feeling. So my photography has changed when I was discovering the desert or the arid regions. I think that piqued my interest in learning how to see a landscape and visually create a vista or an image from that. Composition, but equally, photographing people or photographing an object or a sport. It's capturing the essence of what you're seeing. That's what I strive for.
And I guess it's sort of recording a moment in time for you as well.
Yes. The shutter, I mean, it might be a very short moment, but it sometimes is a lifetime of learning to get to that point. So although the moment is fleeting, it encapsulates a journey or a point in time in a journey that's also changing.
Yeah, and it's kind of recording your own personal journey of what you're doing and who you're with and where you've been, which is, that to me is the beautiful part of photography, isn't it, really?
It is, yeah. And I look back on my catalog and fondly remember my early I suppose scratchings or grapplings with my creativity and seeing the world, and as I progressed, you can and also look back and see how far you've come. That's
yeah. And how do you feel like your photographs have evolved over the years?
I still love looking at my early pictures, early images, and more recent ones. So the great thing about photography is I can recall quite clearly the emotion and the feeling of when I took the picture. Of most of them. Some of them I kind of look at them going, well, I have no idea about that one. It was maybe a snapshot or something just taken without real intent. But most of my images I can reconnect quite clearly with the emotion and with the feeling of looking through that lens and seeing that scene. Yeah, so it's quite a personal reconnection with a lot of with a journey.
Yeah. And so when you arrived in New Zealand, what happened then?
So, yeah, we spontaneously just decided to immigrate here. My sister lived here and my brother had just emigrated to New Zealand. And the main reason was my son and his wife and two children who lived with us in South Africa for a year came home one day and said, we're moving to Australia. So we thought, okay, well, let's look at that opportunity, just see if there's something happening in terms of Australia or New Zealand.
Wow, that's a big move and quite a common move for South Africans to come this way, isn't it?
Well, Australia was big and scary and full of Australians. So, I shouldn't say that. In hindsight, it's full of landscape as well, and amazing landscape. But we looked at Australia and New Zealand just felt like a better fit. We spent some time in both countries, and it just felt like a better fit in terms of culture and opportunity. So New Zealand, it was it. That was our choice, and I arrived here with a work contract which lasted 3 months, and I was made redundant. So I suddenly there was 50 something and not very desirable in terms of the job market. And after several interviews, in fact, very few interviews and plenty of applications. Tina said to me, why don't you just start your printing business again? And I brought my printers with me and set them up to do my own personal printing. Excuse me. And so print art was born in my garage in Auckland.
How amazing.
And the first few years were hard. It's difficult to start a business, as you know, from scratch. And New Zealand is quite a small market. It's not exactly America or South Africa or Australia for that matter. So it took quite a long time to grow the business and set it up and understand the supply chain challenges in New Zealand. Because it's so far away from everywhere, it's expensive to find materials and the right stock. So it took a long time to set the business up. But once it was going, I think I have quite a few of my very first customers are still customers of mine. So
yeah, and I don't doubt that for a minute because, just for the people listening who don't know you, John, I think a huge part of what you do in your fine art printing business is connecting artists, supporting that sort of artistic community in general, and creating new communities sort of within that. And you what you provide is so much more than a service. I think everybody I know who works with you, all the artists you're involved with, are, you develop, it becomes like a big family in a way, which is pretty rare. And it's a beautiful part of your business, I think.
So, print art, when I started the business, it was doing something that I love doing. It's a technical and creative business. And I soon discovered that the one thing that print art does is it enables artists and photographers to take a step into sometimes the unknown for them. A lot of artists are starting out in their journey of creating prints, and it's a scary process because it's for many of them it's unknown. They don't know how to create the digital images. They don't know what sort of paper to use. They don't know where or what quality of paper they require, or where they're going to sell prints, or if they're going to sell prints. So it's really a supporting service that encourages artists to explore alternatives. So I think, printing, almost anybody can print. You just push the button and it comes out of the printer. That's the easy part. The difficult part is guiding people to what they actually need. Many artists arrive with an idea in mind, and after chatting and discussing, they realize that maybe what they were after was not exactly what they wanted. So it's really just it's supporting our customers. I don't like to use the word customers because they're like part of a family. We involved in part of their creative journey, and that's such a privilege. And so they're not really customers; they're more like we're more like a team. So we just form part of their extended team.
Yeah.
In providing what they need.
And that's so true. And it's I think that is quite a unique part of what you offer, and I'm not sure how many other businesses like yours offer that sort of real deep connection with people. And you really kind of pick, especially people who are quite new to making work, you sort of nurture them and support them and make them feel comfortable, because it is quite a scary thing sometimes coming to get prints made. So you're bringing your original work and you're feeling a bit more exposed, potentially, some people, and then obviously you're working with very experienced established artists as well. So it must be amazing for you to have that family of artists.
It's incredible. Every day for me it never feels like work. I don't think I ever wake up in the morning and go, oh, I have to go to work. It's when I arrive at the studio, it's really just an extension of just what I do. I love working with people. Again, I'm a geeky sort of person, so I love exploring technical challenges and finding solutions to them. So that's quite a big part of our business, is making sure that we're unpacking the technical and the scary part, and packaging it in a way for our customers or our artists and photographers that makes it less scary and less intimidating. And we have a lot of people contacting us saying, well, I'm thinking of doing prints. Where do I start? They have they require guidance and they require a bit of nurturing, but they don't want to be intimidated.
That's right.
By the technical side of things. So we repackage it in such a way that we take all of that away, and
you
we
really
focus
do
on the outcome.
Yeah, and you did that for me. it was such a new, for me, it was a whole new idea of actually having prints of my work. I'd never done that. Um, and it is quite daunting when you start thinking about possibly doing that with your own work. You're just not sure where to start, and you don't really. I didn't know anything very much about different techniques or different papers, and to have somebody kind of wrap their arms around you to kind of make you feel like, oh, okay, maybe this can happen, and it is good for a beginning artist, especially.
And that extends to even our experienced artists who either they have started printing and looking to extend that, or sometimes experienced artists who have never even printed before. So we've had artists come back to us after a long break in printmaking, and their previous experience was offset printing, and they would have to go to a printer and print 1,000 images or impressions of their artwork to make it financially viable. And that whole process, and suddenly they come into an environment where it's on-demand printing. Every print will be, pretty close to the previous print. There's no degradation in quality. There's no need to do long print runs. So it's finding the economy for our artists as well. It's not just about, if you need an edition of 20, do you print all 20 at the same time?
Yeah,
so we guide artists in terms of how to manage the economy of it.
Yeah, that's great.
And the business side of their art, not just the commercials, or just not just the artistic side.
Yeah, and that is often daunting for lots of artists, isn't it? That side of things can be. So, can you take us through that process of taking a photograph?
Okay, so when we first started digitizing images, we were using, in fact, my own personal camera, which is a Canon DSLR, and analyzing it, I found it very limiting in terms of its fidelity because of the capture process. And I started investigating alternatives, and eventually came up with the Better Light Scanback, which is it's technology that has been around for about 15 years or 20 years. So it's not new technology, but the results are quite incredible. And I've compared them to many other processes, and I still rate that scanning process as one of the best for capturing artwork because of its fidelity. And it's a very slow process. It takes about 15 to 20 minutes to capture an image. But the quality of the image and the fidelity is incredible. So it's very little retouching from our side, post-production retouching of the artwork. But again, it's a very geeky technical process that requires a bit of nurturing.
Yeah. And then you have it loaded in your system, and then people decide on how they want it printed. So what are the different printing options?
So for printing, once we've digitized that artwork and got it ready for printing, a lot of our artists use our drop shipping service. So they'll literally place an order, send us their customers' details. We'll print it, package it. We'll include their own personal branding and send it off to their customer. So they have very little involvement in the process, other than getting the initial print approved and ready for production. So the printing process, all of our printers are wide gamut sheet clay printers. The only difference in printing would be the paper, the quality of the paper. So we range from archival cotton rags to a decor. It's a cellulose cotton blend paper. So it's not a pure cotton paper, but it's still good quality acid-free paper.
Wow, amazing. There's so much to it, isn't there? And it's amazing that you've actually, I mean, through listening to your journey, you've gone through, different business experiences, and now you've got your, very successful business and you have a shop now. So you're out of your house and you're operating and very busy, aren't you, with print art? And then you've had your photographic sort of experience through your life, and that's connected with your business now. And then your sort of geeky side with the technology and the chemicals, or the processes that you're interested in, have come together again with print art. And so it seems like just a beautiful culmination of all your interests and experiences in a way.
It's yes, it's like a recipe that's, when it comes out of the oven, it's perfect. So
Yeah.
it's a combination of the journey and all the learning processes I've been through. And as I said, to me, it's not work. It's something I enjoy doing.
Yeah.
And I love the people. I love working with people. I love the technology, and I love the creative side. So it's a perfect recipe for me.
Yeah, it really is. It's so good. And you work so closely with New Zealand artists. What do you notice about New Zealand artists? What is there that what is it about New Zealand artists that you see a lot of in your day-to-day work?
I think the one thing that from the very beginning has struck me is how New Zealand artists are obsessed with New Zealand.
Yeah, I've noticed that too.
They're obsessed with the landscape, with
Yeah.
the fauna and flora, and the people. So it's an amazing celebration of a culture, and a multifaceted culture. Growing up in South Africa, we had that was a melting pot of cultures. Besides the indigenous populations, a lot of Euro influences and a lot of European migrants. I'm not talking about the early settlers. I'm talking about through 80s, 90s, and noughties, and into the 10s and 20s. A lot of our friends were expats from various parts of the world, and arriving here, it's the same experience. You have so many different cultures that blend. So the indigenous Maori cultures and the Pakeha, and then of course the early settler cultures, and then later on a lot of the Asian cultures that have arrived here. So it's the same melting pot, but then you get this intense expression of Kiwiness, coming out of almost everywhere. It's quite delightful.
It's really interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, and the way they express it for me is a joy to see. People walk in with artwork, and yes, there's a lot of repetition, but then every now and again, someone arrives there with a completely different take on a subject that you've seen 50 times before. And it's really, you've got to just take a step back and go, wow, that's, I've never thought of looking at that particular aspect of Kiwi life in that way.
And it must be, we spoke earlier before the interview about how sometimes some of the work that you see coming through your business inspires you and, for your own creative practice. So can you tell us how that happens sometimes?
Well, as we were talking about recently, I had Gay Webster come in, and she's a very experienced artist and worked in multiple disciplines, but she does these landscapes that really intrigue me. And as a landscaper, you can recognize the landscape, but it's expressed in such a way that it's fast and loose and not quite deconstructed, but it's abstracted in a way. And then looking at your own work recently, again, deconstructed landscapes and reconstructed in a very precise way, quite different, but gets me thinking about, is that my next journey? Is that my next little step in discovery or creative endeavor, is to find a way to deconstruct the landscape photographically, because you can do the camera movement aspect, which is quite well done, and I'm not going to even go there. And you can do the traditional chocolate boxy kind of, over-processed landscape, and I've done that, and I'm not going back there. And you can explore it in black and white, and I've done that, and I'm not going back there. But I'd like to go forward to finding a way to re-look at the landscape in a fresh way, finding ways to photographically capture it, but deconstruct it and reconstruct it somehow. I have no idea how. So that's part of my challenge. Yeah. So watch the space. Maybe in the next year or two, you may see something.
Sounds interesting. And I remember you saying earlier in the podcast that you were quite into painting. So have you ever kind of dabbled into that again, or have you been inspired to paint after seeing all these painters that you work with?
No. I'm terrified of, I sketched quite a lot when I was younger. In fact, I still have a little book of sketches, and I sketched people like Bruce Lee with his amazing torso, and sketched various other things that took my fancy. And so with a pencil, I might explore art, but when it comes to pigment, I've tried on a number of occasions. In fact, I think my only real contribution to an artwork was our collaborative creative jam.
That's right, yeah. And that's another story too, isn't
it? Squirting piles of red ink onto a palette and smearing it onto the canvas, So it scares me. It scares me terribly to dabble in that. I think it's just because I don't have the patience. And perhaps it maybe is a matter of finding the right tutor or mentor.
Find that mentor like Peter again. And also it's a time thing, isn't it? I mean, you're very busy with your other things. So maybe when you're 85, John, this will be something you can explore.
The thing I love about photography is that, it's an instant feedback loop. You can have an idea and explore it very quickly. It's or you can take a long time to explore it. So it doesn't have to be a happy snappy scenario, but it provides quick feedback, so I can express an idea very quickly and get the feedback and begin that cycle of finding the sweet spot in it, or the magic in it. Whereas I think, sitting down with a palette of paint and constructing something on a blank canvas scares the hell out of me.
Oh, it's funny. So, John, we're actually kind of almost running out of time, but there are a couple of things that I wanted to talk about as well. So if we just very, very super quickly touch on it, that is your art collective that you've established. So can you tell us about that?
Art Collective was born probably about 3 years ago. And that would have been 2018, 19. I'd been working with artists for a number of years through print art, and realized that a lot of the artists, one thing they struggled with was marketing their artwork and getting it to market. And so Art Collective was born. It is intended to be a platform where artists can market and sell their work. And after having set it up initially, I realized that it wasn't a walk in the park. It was going to take a lot of hard work and quite a lot of money to market that platform. So it kind of idled along for a while, but recently we reignited that flame. And we have a bigger team now, so we have more resources. And thank goodness for lockdowns. I don't know if I should say that, but yeah, thank goodness for lockdowns, because it gave us, 2 months of uninterrupted time to work on Art Collective and launch it. And so that has now become a platform where artists can market their work.
So it's kind of like an online gallery, isn't it, through a website?
Exactly that, yeah. And it supports only Kiwi artists, and it's intended to be for artists, not for quite a few of these websites sell prints, and they source their material from various collections and well-known photographers and iconic images. And it's pop art, and it's decor wall art. But we intend to, use Art Collective as a much more Kiwi-centric and original artwork platform.
That's brilliant. So good. So I'll put a link to that at the bottom of your blog post. And there are many other things that we could talk about. I really have to talk about Petal, your massive bull mastiff. And I know that you're a real dog person, so am I. And Petal, she hangs out in the office, in the studio at Print Art, doesn't she? And is a big part of your life. And you've had lots of bull mastiffs in the past, haven't you? Oh, that sounds like that might be her.
On cue.
She's just responding to that. Hello, Petal.
She's just responding. She's not going to be left out of this conversation.
That's hilarious. She's barking away. She's probably wanting to get in, John. You've locked her out for too long.
I think so, yeah. She's definitely missing me.
Oh, well, that's just part of the family, isn't it, I guess?
Absolutely.
Petal. And you've got your two amazing people, Nicola, who works with you, or, as part of the team.
Yes. Yeah, Nicola and Kim.
And Kim,
Yeah, they're wonderful members of the team.
They're amazing.
Nicola was an absolute blessing when the first lockdown ended, and suddenly I was swamped with work. Very grateful, but very overwhelmed. And Nicola, she's a family friend. I've known her for many years, and she had been made redundant at the beginning of the lockdown. Oh, so wow. I just approached her and said, "Hey, come and work." And she grasped that with both hands, and she's just an absolute star to have in our team.
Yeah, absolutely. I didn't realize that. No, she's amazing.
Yeah,
and once again, you surround yourself with the right people who have those same sort of values and connect so beautifully with people who come into the studio.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So it's so our little team is growing, and I must also mention Gail. Gail Stent is the first person I met in New Zealand, other than my family, and she introduced me to the local photographic scene and the North Shore Photographic Society and the Photographic Society of New Zealand, the PSNZ. And she's been a great mentor and friend for many years, or in fact, since I've arrived here. And she's also part of our team. So she does our newsletters, and she does the occasional video that we splash out on Instagram.
Oh, that's
so we have a wonderful growing team.
Yeah. So it is an amazing business, and you've got such a beautiful practice, and hopefully you'll continue with your own photography if you don't get too busy with print art, now that you're such a popular guy with artists. So what do you think is in the future for you, John?
Well, one of my plans is, grow print art to a point where I can step away for periods of time and travel. So that's the immediate objective. Tina and I have always wanted to visit Europe, and hopefully by the time the pandemic sort of normalizes, we will be able to travel to Europe. So the intention is go back to the camper vanning part of our lives and go and buy a camper van, store it in Europe for our use, and go over there for 4 or 5 months a year. And discover all the places that we, missed as young adults with a young family. So we didn't quite do our OE. In fact, Tina did. She spent time in Germany as an OE, but I never quite got there. So we would love to, explore Europe and then maybe other areas and New Zealand. So it'll be a mix of New Zealand, Australia, and Europe.
And I imagine your own practice will develop again like it did, last time you did your camper vanning. That could be a whole new opportunity for you as well.
You never know. It gives you time to think, when you unhook from day-to-day routines and pressures, it gives you time to imagine a new universe or a new opportunity and explore that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. Well, on that note, with Petal barking in the background, she's obviously like, "Come on, John, you've been talking way too long."
Yeah.
I'll wrap it up. But thank you so much for joining me, John. It's been really interesting to hear about your amazing journey, and I'm sure people listening will have found it really insightful hearing about the printing process. And yeah, it's been lovely to see you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mandy.